Hello and welcome to this very special Diwali edition of Take 3. At the outset, a very happy Diwali to all our viewers in India and around the world. So, it is Diwali, it's a festive special, so we have a special guest joining us here in our studios. Guest host this week on Take 3, Nalan Mehta is Managing Editor of Money Control. Welcome to the program. And of course, familiar fixture here, Rahul Trivshankar, contributing editor with Network 18. We have two topics, and it couldn't be, further apart. One is about Trump and Russia and oil and India importing Russian oil. And the other is about Bihar. It's like at two ends of the spectrum. So let's start with the Trump oil stuff. What do you make of what Trump has said this week?
So one thing seems clear, that the optics have changed in the last 10-15 days. Something is happening in the background, right? I mean, there was a lot of hostility, overt hostility earlier. But if you see the tweets from both sides, if you see the sort of the tone of the messaging and so on, something is happening at the back end. But in the substantive part of it, just before the Commerce Secretary left for the US, he said, look, there's scope to increase our US buying of oil by $1.5 billion. That's been said on the record. I want to show you some figures, Zaka. If you look at 2024, January 2024 to December 2024, the share of Russian buying by India was cumulatively about 35%. Russia accounted for 35%. The US accounted for 3.8%. Now, from the time Trump has taken over, around the last week of January, so we count from February to now, in that same period, the Russian share has gone down from 35% to 31.2%, and the US share has gone up from 3.8% to 7.5%. So what that's telling you is that India has not significantly reduced its Russian buying, but a little bit, 3, 4, 5%. And that's exactly the concomitant increase that's happening in the US thing. The latest numbers are July. In the month of July, India's imported about $3.6 billion of Russian oil, which is roughly around 29.8%. This is just the latest numbers. And from the US, we've done about 1.1 billion, which is around 9.1%. 24 months ago, the numbers were very different. It was 37% versus 0.9%, you see month on month. So there is a shift happening there, but it's happening on India's terms. It's not like we're just selling out and so on. There is some kind of balancing there, but Russia still remains your biggest chunk.
Yeah. Rahul, what do you, I mean, so the thing that was surprising to me was, I thought there was some kind of an understanding that had been arrived, particularly when the newly appointed US ambassador came last week and he met everyone. He met from the Prime Minister, he met the Foreign Affairs Minister, that look, we're moving in the direction of finding a deal, even if it's an interim one. At some point, we will try and announce that. And there was also hope that the two leaders will meet in Kuala Lumpur when the ASEAN summit happens. But now Trump coming out and saying, I've spoken to Modi and Modi has assured me that he's going to stop buying Russian oil. A, as Nalan said, the numbers belie that. And B, the sort of public pronouncements of that, how does that play out? I mean, how does that and what position does that put Modi in?
So, Jaka, just on facts first. Okay, we have actually a problem. We can't sustain the purchase of Russian oil, even though the prices are quite attractive. Why? Because European Union is set for a whole range of sanctions on any repurposed Russian oil. So basically, if we are importing Russian oils, oil marketing companies are, and they are turned into certain products, those products will not find buyers in the EU. So that one loophole that existed, that's gone. That's because of Trump's pressure on Europe. So fundamentally, a lot of our offtake will lie unutilized. We'll have to find new markets for it. So the fait accompli is not really coming from Trump in a sense. It's coming from the overbearing reliance that we had on oil exports to Europe. That stream is going to get cut. Simultaneously, we are also, if you just look at the new numbers, the tariffs have hit. They've created a bit of a wrinkle in the economy, so to speak. But a lot of but the exports have gone up by about 4 or 5%. How has that happened? Because we found other markets. China, for instance, is taking in some. So I think what the Commerce Secretary has said that, look, the tariffs are not really having that much of an impact. The idea here is to contain the fallout of these differences that we have with Trump, who's pursuing his Nobel Prize into the next year and wants peace in Europe, hitting other aspects of the relationship, I think that's where the complications could arise for India, because we are dependent on other things, United States. As of now, we've compartmentalized, contained the fallout. But I think there's a possibility of this sort of osmotically, hitting the other areas. So there's one problem. But, I feel fundamentally what Trump has said is going to, at one level, land Prime Minister Modi in controversies back home. So this is, if you really say that you are very fond of Prime Minister Modi, that there's a lot of love between us, in
and
the
then he says, I don't want to say love.
In the platonic sense.
And
you know what I'm saying? So if there's such high regard, as he keeps saying, you're a great guy, then you're basically hitting the Prime Minister in a place where he's going to have to answer to a domestic constituency, which I don't think he'll appreciate, really, to be honest.
Which the Congress, Rahul Gandhi, I think, tweeted about it. And
everyone has. And
so are those valid questions in your view?
Look, the questions, if someone is saying to you, and saying it publicly, that, look, there's an assurance that we will not buy Russian oil, and I've been told that.
Yeah.
I think that warrants some clarification. Hopefully, there will be a statement, but I don't think it's going to stop at the MEA putting out a statement. I think the opposition...
You don't make much of what they've said. I mean,
I think the MEA has responded in a standard way to the fact that, look, we are going to look for oil. Net, what they're saying is from wherever we get a great deal. So if we have to pivot, we have to pivot. If we don't have to pivot...
So, just my own sort of view on this is, obviously, look, there might have been some kind of understanding. They've been speaking, right? Yeah. They spoke in September, just before the Prime Minister's birthday. They spoke again earlier this month when the Gaza peace announcement was made. And of course, I think the fact that the ambassador came and met all of these officials is significant because he has Trump's ear. Now, it is possible that, there is some kind of understanding that as we reduce our dependence on Russian crude, we will increase, energy purchases from the US, and that's what the Commerce Secretary said. Again, as Nalin said, it was on record that we'll go from 15 billion to 25 billion. But
which is where we were at one time.
Yeah, which is where we were before the war started, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, and I tend to agree with what Rahul is saying, by publicly saying this, Trump is putting Modi in a very difficult position, right? Because you would imagine that any opposition leader would then ask that question, right? Why is somebody else saying that this is what the Indian Prime Minister has assured me? I mean, that's a legit question to ask.
If you see the pattern of this seesaw between Trump and Modi, ever since Trump ratcheted up the temperatures on this bilateral relationship, every time Trump has made statements like these which are politically damaging to the Prime Minister, you've not had a response from the Prime Minister. You've had a response from the MEA with a very clear sort of denial on multiple levels, that includes umpteen number of times that claims were made about the ceasefire and Op Sindoor and so on and so forth. Trump has been careful not to use derogatory language about Modi, and I think that's different from how he's done with others, by the exception of Xi Jinping. So that's two. But I think you're right. Politically, the Prime Minister has also gone out and said, I will have to that there will be no compromise for India and I'll have to pay a price for it. And that he said it on the Bihar campaign. In his first rally, actually, he made that point, right? So the sense I get is that there are certain red lines that India is not going to cross, which are, for example, on agriculture. There has been no sense that there is any give on that, as far as I understand. Second, on oil, you could have something, but it'll have to be done in a manner where it doesn't look like a defeat or a real compromise for India, because 6-7% here and there and all of that. So you can't just wean off, while Rahul is right, you can't just wean off Russian oil altogether.
Correct.
You can go it from 27% to 22-23%, but you can't just go down.
People often don't talk about this. One is you can calibrate your diversify your portfolio. You can buy more American oil, less Russian. But if you do it suddenly, it's going to have a domestic implication. I mean, your petrol and diesel prices will face pressure, and we know from the Modi government's record, they don't want to increase prices, especially going into Bihar, and then you have next year, in the first few months itself, you have a big set of elections in Tamil Nadu, Bengal, etc.
Exactly.
They want to keep domestic oil prices as stable as possible. So that's an implication. So suddenly you can't just, it's not like turning off the tap. You're importing 30% Russian oil.
I'm quite surprised that, the Prime Minister would have committed himself I think there is somebody, Trump is being a little disingenuous. I think fundamentally, I don't think any sovereign nation would have sort of said that, look, we are discounting X in favor of Y. I don't think that works.
Exactly. No, the other thing is, because of these public pronouncements, I'm not even sure now if the two of them can meet in Kuala Lumpur. First of all, I always maintain that it was contingent on whether the trade negotiators can arrive at some kind of an interim trade deal. We still don't know if that's going to be signed off. And secondly, by saying what he has said publicly, like I said, I would find it very difficult to imagine that the Prime Minister will be able to publicly contradict that, and B, more importantly, having said this, how does he go and meet Trump? I mean, how does he?
I think it's a problem to meet Trump anyway. If you saw the summit last week,
exactly.
What happened with Starmer and with others, and with the Indonesian head of state,
and
the Pakistani Prime Minister.
Shahbaz.
So I think the Prime Minister has been very careful and the Indian establishment has been very careful in not exposing Prime Minister Modi to that kind of third-degree treatment, if you like, and to be very careful about the optics of this. So I would be very surprised if Prime Minister Modi and Trump meet unless there's a complete agreement on the deal itself. Right?
So what's your understanding of where we stand on that?
So my sense is that things have moved forward. There is an attempt to significantly move forward after having very hard line on both sides earlier. I would add that there is a third element to this, which is the rare earths thing. Because on the rare earths, on the Chinese actions on rare earth is what changed the dynamics between Trump and China, and now China has climbed down again. And I think India is also making a play on this. There is a policy that has been put together. There's a conversation around that. I feel that is one of the unsaid things in the background, which is also having a play on this.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, this whole thing was contingent on Trump and Xi Jinping meeting. Both of them, I think, publicly announced it. But now with the export controls that China has put, I'm not sure if they will actually meet. I'm not sure that the said meeting between Xi and Trump will happen. And if there's no deal to be announced, again, that meeting will not happen. But here's an opportunity for India. In this window, can India push through its own trade deal with the US, which has been hanging fire for,
Well, again, you see, this has got caught up in domestic posturing. For Trump specifically. Trump is playing to a domestic gallery. He's made an example out of India. He said that India is the tariff king. And he has to go back to his constituency and say that, look, this deal is so much in our favor that it completely justifies what I was saying. So I've really cut India down to size, which obviously makes it incumbent upon India to accept that kind of deal, which I don't think Modi administration is going to do. But, I found this reaction that Trump gave on BRICS a lot more interesting and filled with long-term consequence. India takes over the presidency of BRICS next year in January.
Correct, yeah.
And the timing of that comment to say that, BRICS is collapsing and I'm making sure that it collapses, and already sort of suggesting that people are quitting the BRICS sort of framework. And then, of course, you have the Quad, which is hanging fire. And India has embarked on a very interesting round of diplomacy amongst other Quad partners. So Japan and Australia, we've been sort of engaging very hard. If you just noticed, Rajnath Singh was in Australia, and we've been engaging the Japanese. I think there are these two unfinished, unresolved questions apart and beyond. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. The trade relationship, a lot hinges on it, because we don't want a situation where the trade wrinkle begins to upset the other parts of this relationship.
I want to add to this that the situation has also changed in the last 2-3 months from where there was a lot of gloom and despair 2-3 months back. There's a UK-India trade deal has been signed, which has brought a lot more confidence to the establishment. There's a lot more opportunities opening up. It's not going to be as much gloom and doom as many people thought in terms of the exports being cut off from the US. There is a lot of momentum with the India-EU talks, and very importantly on the defense side. And I know we've had this argument earlier, Zaka, but after the experience of Op Sindoor, where you couldn't rely on the US to back you up significantly, India is currently in the midst of one of the largest build-ups in its arms arsenal, if you like, of any other country in the last 15-20 years. Now, there was a sense that the US was a natural partner and you were going to expand on that. the lesson the Indian establishment has learned from Op Sindoor is you can't rely on the US. You have to be, multi-sourced, which is why you're looking at the Zafran engine from France for the advanced fighter jet, looking at other equipment, and Russia as well. So this balancing act has to continue, and I think that's a very important imperative.
Can I just add on this whole thing about BRICS and Quad? Look, I think this is my sort of guesstimate. I don't think Trump thinks particularly highly of Quad. I don't think he's ever even mentioned Quad in the 7-8 months that he's been in office in any serious way in the second term. So I don't think it's a top priority for him. I don't think he particularly cares about Quad. If tomorrow he were to be able to cut a deal with Xi Jinping, and if Xi Jinping says, you exit from this part of the world, this is my backyard, this is my hemisphere, I decide, what happens in this part of the world, Trump will take that deal. So I don't think he's big on Quad. On the BRICS conversation, and there's an irony here, right? The more he keeps talking about BRICS, that's actually giving a reason for these countries to come together.
Exactly.
I mean, frankly, in this day and age, 20, 25 years after Jim O'Neill came up with this whole thing about, the fastest growing emerging economies, there is nothing really common between Russia, India, China, and South Africa, except the fact that Trump is pushing all of these countries.
The one thing Trump understands is leverage.
Yeah.
BRICS gives you leverage.
Yeah.
Because even if there was no serious move towards a common currency, I mean, there is you have to have leverage in terms of give and take, right? So I think it is a sort of arrow in your arsenal to negotiate on.
Yeah. No, so it is interesting because one of the Russian spokespeople has come out and said that India is now doing a lot of trade with Russia and oil in yuan, which is that sort of waving the red rag at Trump, who says dollar must rule the world and so on and so forth. So anyhow, he's right. It's leverage. But fundamentally, I'm a little worried right now about the impact overall on the Indo-US relationship. I don't believe that, look, we can't also veer away from the United States, right? We can't say that it doesn't exist. So we have to spread our risk. And the more we do that, the more we diversify our strategic interests, I think that's the best way forward.
And, frankly, there's a limit to how much you can cooperate with China.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that's evident in the last 5 years because
so you're
of the
you're a rock in a hard place, actually.
Let me add to the point, so if I may. I think there is also, and I think this should not be underestimated. There's been a lot of criticism of Indian Americans not talking up or not saying their piece, right? But look at the actions that are being taken. Google has just announced its biggest investment in Visakhapatnam, in down south. Apple has doubled down on its investments here, even though Trump specifically asked Apple not to. So there is an imperative from American businesses too, and that also there is something happening there, which is not necessarily what Trump wanted to happen.
Okay.